Welcome back to For Love and Justice. It feels good to be here with you again, especially for an episode like this one. But before we dive into today's conversation, I want to name where we are as a country right now. The political climate in America has become increasingly dangerous for everyone, but especially for trans people. Not abstractly, not someday, but right now. We're watching policies shift overnight, gender-affirming care being stripped away, trans people barred from public service, legal recognition rolled back, federal language rewritten to erase entire communities. These aren't just issues for the news cycle. They shape where people can live, how they're treated, and whether they feel safe existing in public spaces at all. And it's why my conversation with Rachel Garrett Steele feels so important to get out into the world. In a past life, Rachel and I were coworkers. Now she's someone I learn from constantly, one of my favorite people to follow online, and someone whose vulnerability has helped me to see the world more clearly. Rachel is a trans woman who made the heartbreaking but necessary decision to leave the United States in search of a life where she could live freely and without fear. Hearing the full arc of that journey, the grief, the relief, the rebuilding, the joy, it felt like a privilege. We talk about what her day-to-day life looks like now, how her sense of home has shifted, and what hope looks like when the world doesn't always make room for it. This episode isn't just about survival. It's about choosing joy, choosing authenticity, choosing freedom, even when the stakes are impossibly high. I'm grateful to share Rachel's story with you. And if it moves you, teaches you something, or opens your eyes a little wider, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Our trans friends need us to be safe spaces for them. Welcome, Rachel. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about what daily life looks like for you now?
Sure. In a lot of ways, it's very similar. I'm a freelancer, and I'm an editor. I'm a musician. I do a few different things, and so I work from home. I try to make sure that I get out of the house and see people often enough to make it worth it, so I don't go sort of completely feral. In a lot of ways, it's very similar. I guess the everyday differences, obviously, I'm adjusting to a new culture. I am trying to learn a new language very poorly. But there are also, there's some wonderful things too. It's very walkable. I have to go to the grocery store a lot more often because they actually monitor preservatives and things. Stuff goes bad. You have to buy smaller amounts. But the walk to the grocery store is beautiful. There's a canal there. I don't mind doing it. I don't know. I guess the other thing that's different is that there is a social safety net in place. And, I don't understand a lot of it yet because it's very new. A lot of things cost more, but things that really matter, like healthcare, cost so much less you can't even chart it. So I don't know.
Pros and cons. There are pros and cons.
Yeah.
What language are you learning?
Well, I'm trying to learn Dutch, which is sort of, it bears just enough similarity to English that it feels like someone is playing a prank on you. And it bears just enough similarity to German for you to think if you have any familiarity with German, maybe you think you know how to pronounce things, but you don't actually. And I want to learn the language. I want to assimilate to the degree that I can. There's a really strong age divide between how much the people here care about that. Because I think under 40, most people do not care. And then as people start getting older, it becomes more important. Actually, when I registered to live in the city, I went down to the city office and mentioned I learned, I was trying to learn Dutch. And the first thing the woman who works for the city asked was why.
What a question.
Yeah. And I was like, well, I need it for citizenship. And she goes, oh, my father always said it is not a language, it is a throat condition. And apparently that is a very common thing that people from here will tell you. It is not a thing that I probably would ever say myself. I mean, I guess I did in the sense that I told you the story about it being told to me, but I don't know. Sorry.
No, I love it. How has your creativity or self-expression changed since moving?
Honestly, it sort of had a truck run over it when I first got here. Um, I was staying in Airbnbs. I was at one point living in a friend's attic. Um, and I was working on things here and there, but between the pressures of trying to move and the pressures of trying to work enough to pay the moving costs, I didn't get a lot done. Now that I'm a little more settled, that dam is starting to break a little bit. I'm writing lyrics again. I, got the saxophone back out. It felt like finding a limb that had been missing. Um, it is returning. It's returning, and it feels really nice to be getting it back.
When do you feel most like yourself these days?
Well, that's an interesting question because on the one hand, I think I mentioned this to you previously. Like, on the one hand, I sort of feel like I'm in one of the later David Lynch movies. It sort of feels like Lost Highway or Mulholland Drive. Like, I wake up every morning and I am in a different country and a different body than the one that I had even a year ago. And that is very disorienting. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I can look at myself without crying, which is a plus.
Yeah, that's everything.
Yeah, and there was like a solid, couple of decades where I didn't have that. So I don't know if there's like a specific moment. I mean, I always feel most myself when I'm surrounded by friends. But other than that, I think I'm just sort of existing in this perpetual state of being very deeply rooted in a sense of self that is new enough that I am still finding its boundaries. Like, I don't have a map yet, but I know that I'm home.
Oh, that's beautiful, Rachel. That's absolutely beautiful.
Shucks. Thank you.
What's something that's brought you joy lately?
Oh, so much. The last couple of weeks have been very busy. I had a friend who sang in this really gorgeous production of Marriage of Figaro with this orchestra that uses like 18th century instruments, and the musicality was just incredible. And after that, I went to Utrecht, where I had never been, and my wife and I had dinner at this little like German restaurant that was level with the canal. Like, you could just look out the front door and the water was right there, and there was like schnitzel and all this great stuff. Got to meet these like internet friends for the first time. I went to this local trans meetup, and that was beautiful. It felt like a family dinner. I was like in the kitchen cooking with the person who's usually there cooking, and there was everyone from like a very young, like 20-year-old trans man there for the first time with his supportive parents, and a woman who was there who had just had her first birthday as herself at the age of 65.
Wow.
And it was so like, it was just like all these different people from all these walks of life with one thing in common, gathering together to like cook and eat this meal. And it was incredible. I went out. I have a friend who's an engineer for the European Space Agency, who also, left the United States, went and like got to break bread with that family, and that was one. Like, I've been making connections here, and really that's what brings me the most joy. And I think I've always been someone who thrives on that connection. I actually, in college, before I even dared to suggest to myself that I might be trans, people called me the mom friend. Like, I joined Facebook because my friends started a group called my name at the time, but basically about me being their mother away from home. So like that's always been the vibe, even when it didn't have a context to put it in. And
Yeah, that explains your blue sky name.
yeah, that's what that's about.
Yeah.
It, I don't know if it explains sort of the unhingedness beneath it, but it's a start.
Rachel, what's your go-to comfort show, book, or music artist these days?
Well, I've been listening to a lot of Neko Case. She was out of Tacoma, singer songwriter, kind of floats between like country and kind of an indie folk thing. She's a member of the New Pornographers, if you know
I
them
don't.
at all.
I'm intrigued.
Okay, sorry. Well, there's it is a great name. So they're part of that whole like Canadian cluster of like indie rock groups that were sort of inescapable in like the mid to late 2000s. But um, yeah, I've been doing a lot of that. I've been listening to Carsey Blanton, who is a singer songwriter. When I saw her, she was very tied to Louisiana. I'm not sure if that's where she still is. I know she'd been in Pittsburgh. She most recently was sort of arrested on that like aid flotilla with Greta Thunberg. And she's back out of that. But a lot of just sort of, yeah, like the old stuff is very like doe-eyed sort of lovesick, but in this really sort of like self-actualized, like take no shit kind of way. And then clearly has sort of like veered more into protesty types of things. But that's been, and I finally hooked things up so that I can like watch my DVDs again. And the very first thing that I did was putting Ghost in the Shell because I'm sci-fi trash and anime trash. And, I needed something that felt
It
like
wasn't the one
home
with Scarlett
to
Johansson,
ground
was
me.
it?
It was not the one with Scarlett Johansson. I do own that one because of like a little like a bargain bin moment and a deep completist streak. But that is not the one. No. I'm astonished that you even know that
Oh, I know the
exists.
controversy. I know the controversy.
Yeah, it was a moment. Not her only controversy, but this conversation is not about her.
Yes, it's about you. And I want to know, what was the turning point that made you feel like leaving the US was necessary?
So my wife and I have kind of a process that we follow when we are making decisions that we think will have to be fast. And basically, like, we set out all of the possibilities that we can and all of the courses of action that we could take. And like, we lay it out ahead of time and we say, okay, like, if this possibility opens, here's what we are saying now is important, right? So we drew several lines in the sand. And honestly, we started getting anxious before the election. Honestly, we started getting anxious back at the beginning of Biden's term when it became apparent that the Democrats weren't going to actually like do any kind of like charges or consequences for some of the conduct of the previous administration, right? Like they're just, I mean, if you look at like Brazil, right? Bolsonaro was like indicted, tried, convicted, jailed. Like that is how historically you deal with these things and these people if you don't want them to resurface later worse. So you have what Brazil did, and then you have what like Weimar Germany did, or sorry, Weimar Republic did, and we kind of did the Weimar thing. And that made me nervous.
Yeah. Just lying down and taking it.
Yeah. Which there's a time and a place, but come on. So sorry. That was a reflex.
You're fine.
Oh, so, as the election approached, we became anxious. And there was a lot of sort of like really intense anti-trans rhetoric, anti-immigrant rhetoric coming out. And the other sort of red flag for us was the number of Democrats who weren't actually saying anything to combat that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they've done studies on this as like political strategy, because everyone talks about, oh, we need to move to the center so we can like get these reasonable Republicans to vote for the Democrats. So like scientifically, that has literally never worked in the US or in any country on earth, because if you have a choice between like fascism and diet fascism, you're going to vote for the name brand. And if you're one of these marginalized groups that's looking for a leftist party to protect you and they don't, that suppresses voter turnout. And like, I did vote, but like, look at the places that where the voters didn't show up.
Mm-hmm.
It was places that were like heavy with populations that needed to hear that someone was going to stand up for them and that didn't. And so when we saw that happening, I got a little more anxious.
Mm-hmm.
And so finally it was like, okay, my absolute red line is, do we start like taking away like rights in a concrete way, right? So November happened, Trump won the election, and I immediately was like, okay, I need to process my name change. I need to like finish updating my passport. I need to do all of these things. Like I'd already changed the gender on my passport, but I hadn't finalized the name because like, frankly, I was still figuring that out. Like I was not married to Rachel when I became married to Rachel in a legal sense, because like I wasn't finished with that process, but I knew it was use it or lose it, right?
Right.
So like in the time between like those early polls coming in and the election going through, I became Rachel legally everywhere possible. And then sure enough, absolute day one, we get this executive order that comes out, and it doesn't only like strip away several rights immediately and concretely. It also has some incredibly dehumanizing language in it. And that was the moment at which we were like, okay, it's time to plan the exit, like in a concrete way. We talked to like a friend's immigration lawyer in Portugal. Didn't do that, but it made the rest of it feel possible. There are resources out there specifically aimed at trans people, at like, okay, where can you go where access to healthcare is less restricted, where can you go where like you will be recognized legally for what you are, where like you don't have to worry as much about hate crimes. Like, how does that intersect with other like axes of marginalization you might be experiencing, so that people can make that decision. And the Netherlands had this like freelance visa, so we started heading that way because I did have the freelance business going,
Mm-hmm.
And by the time we left, they had done sport bans, which the funny thing about the sport bans, my like muscle mass, my bone density, the protein markers in my blood are all, to borrow a phrase from them, biologically female, right? And we know this because sporting leagues have done this research time and time again. The Olympics has done a lot of studies about this
Mm-hmm.
because they don't like us. Like the Olympic Committee hates trans women in particular, trans people broadly, but like especially trans women. And so they keep commissioning research trying to prove that we are somehow different. And the research keeps coming back, like their own science keeps coming back and saying no. So like the bans are not based in science. They are based in something that like sounds reasonable if you're uneducated.
Mm-hmm.
And they are an invitation for you to like start buying into this line of thought that ends. I mean, you can look out in the streets of Chicago and LA and you can see where it's ending.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not done yet. So the sports ban hit, the military ban hit. I'm not in the military, but you can see what's happening is the areas of public life that we are allowed to participate in is shrinking and
Mm-hmm.
shrinking. And like, you feel that.
Mm-hmm.
So we had already made the decision. We'd already made the plan, bought the plane tickets when I got called up for jury duty.
Mm.
And that meant going down to the courthouse. And of course, Arkansas, as you know, passed its own bathroom ban. And here's the fun thing about bathroom bans. I mean, you've seen me. I'm floating somewhere between a C cup and a D cup. I think I've got a pretty banging waist, if I can say that for myself, right? Like,
Yeah.
I absolutely like, I read feminine to most people. Um, so I can take my D cup having self into the men's room and get assaulted any number of ways, or I can go into the women's room, risk the chance that someone does clock me, get the police involved. Next thing I know, I'm in a women's prison looking, no, sorry, I'm in a men's prison, right? Looking like this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they have procedures for dealing with trans women in men's prisons. And typically those procedures, this is called V coding, right? There's a name for it. There's research and papers about it. And basically they tend to put us in shared spaces with the most violent inmates, basically as like this sort of pacifying gift. Like, we are 1,000% like a sexual offering to whoever's giving them the most trouble.
Yeah.
And I think the last survey of trans women inmates who are in men's prisons, 80% of them indicated that they were in a, quote, marriage-like relationship with at least one male inmate, either voluntarily for protection or, I think in, a lot of cases, involuntarily. And that's just sort of like the reality of, the sort of like prison segregation thing, which was also part of that first executive order, right? So I'm in this courthouse and I asked them, I was like, okay, like, you have all my documents in front of you. Where can I pee? And they didn't know. Like, they couldn't tell me. And finally, by the time, yeah. And so, like, finally, by the time, because there were like court challenges, no one knew like where it was, what the current law was, or like what injunctions. And by the time one of them said, like, it's single occupancy, just go to the women's room. Like, the thing was starting and I got like shoved into the courthouse to sit through like an hour of this, like, jury duty instructions with my leg crossed, like, all so I could tell them that I was moving anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, like, I didn't want to risk anything happening since no one seemed to know what was going on with me anyway. And I just sort of like waddled a half mile downtown to my wife's office to use the restroom there. And it was absolutely degrading in like
Yeah.
every possible way. And it really sort of cemented that I was making the right decision, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what that
So
is.
yeah, yeah. And so, like, you ask about like, was there a moment? I know we were looking for an exit by like December. We kind of found it by like January, February. And then on my birthday in April, I threw a big party. And it was the name of the party was, um, you know, birthday party, Traniversary party. You're not allowed to say that. I am. Moving away party. Please drink all my booze. Like, it was this ridiculous giant party name. And then I woke up, without a hangover because God loves me. And I got on a plane to leave the country, and, maybe someday I'll get to go back,
Yeah.
but I'm not planning to.
So, how did your support system react when you shared your decision to leave the US?
By and large, everyone understood. There was one person who was close to me who sort of challenged it. And that actually, if someone challenges a decision like that, right, then what it tells you is either that they're not paying enough attention or that they like don't trust you to speak to your experience enough
Mm-hmm.
to like know what you need to do with your life.
Yeah.
So like that was a blow. But I think by and large, I have done a careful enough job curating the relationships in my life. That like I didn't really get a lot of hate when I came out, and I didn't really get a lot of confusion or pushback when I said that I was moving, because the people who are in my life now are people who get it.
Mm-hmm.
And, that was a conscious, very careful decision on my part, over many decades of pruning that garden.
You got to prune. You got to keep pruning.
You do. You do. You also have to tend, you have to water.
Yes. You have to
And
do
I
all.
spend much more time doing that, but it's a process.
Yes. So how does the local government and community where you live now, how do they affirm or challenge your identity in ways that feel different from back home?
Well, there's a little both. By and large, it's much more affirming, right? I mean, not dealing with the constant threat of extermination is great. I love that. That is a huge vibe. When I got here, actually, so I was not allowed to change my birth certificate in Arkansas, because in order to change your birth certificate, you have to have bottom surgery, right? AKA a sex reassignment, AKA the surgery, although there's like a ton of surgeries. I have like 3 people who got new faces this week alone. So, and every state has their own kind of different procedures for that. So I went I went to the office, like, again, like, to register with the city and, start my immigration process and all of this. And like, I have all of my documents that had the little F on them and my new name, and the birth certificate had like my new name and M, which like, I wasn't going to change my name either, right? Like, I brought my name change document. I wasn't planning, but like at the birth records office, they were like, yeah, might as well. Like, you're here, you've got all your stuff, just do it. And I was like, okay, fine. Except now I have like a birth certificate that says Rachel and has an M. And so like, I think my mom's a little sad that I like changed my birth certificate. And I'm a lot sad that I didn't like that if I changed it at all, I didn't change it at all. Anyway, doesn't matter. I go to this office and they come to me and they have my passport and they have my birth certificate and they say, so this says F. And I said, yes. And they showed me my birth certificate and they said, this says M. I said, oh, I'm very aware. And I was like, oh shoot, where's this going to go? And they go, there is someone in the office who knows how to deal with this, but he is not here today. He's on holiday. When he returns, we will let you know how this goes. It's like, okay, great. That's fine. Like, as long as there's someone who knows what's going on, like, I'll take it. That's perfect. So, generally speaking, people have been very affirming. The community has been very affirming. I find, interestingly, I think people notice that I'm trans a little more often because people are a little more open. That's not quite true. People are more visibly inhabiting public spaces as themselves. So I think there is more familiarity in some ways with the trans community. That said, Dutch culture is very much about not standing out in any way. So I think like outside of very specific like spaces or parties or like, pride, whatever, there's not a lot of like, visible queerness transpiring. which is a dimension that I actually hadn't kind of like butted into the last time we talked. Quite as much, but like I'm noticing it a little more now. Access to healthcare has been interesting. I finally got like my approval where they're like, oh yeah, she's actually like doing work. I'll dial it back. I was like, I finally just got the like approval here to be like, oh yeah, she's actually doing work. Like she has insurance. Please give her insurance. Well, sell her insurance, whatever. So like I haven't actually had a chance to talk to a Dutch doctor about my healthcare. I know like some people get funneled into this hideous waiting list system. I have other friends who like they look at what you're on and they go, okay, like you know what you're doing. Here's the prescriptions you had. There is one big issue, which is that my medication, I use injectable estrogen. I have to give myself a shot every 5-7 days. And there are a lot of advantages of that. Like I'm going to be on these hormones the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be hell on your liver if you put it through your liver. So the injection skips that. There are like patches and gels you can use, but the injections are the best way to get like the smoothest peak of estrogen for the longest time at the ideal doses. And they just don't have it here at all. Which is interesting because like they manufacture it in Portugal and in Spain, the injectables. It's like right next door. You know, you could throw a rock. And like I was talking to a pharmacist and she was like, I don't know what this is. This is very complicated. It's like it's not. I've been on this for like 2 years.
Yeah.
It's like it's very so apparently that's just not something that they do. And you know, it's a big continent. There are options. But it was interesting that in a country that's so much more like accepting culturally of queer people, that the healthcare was so far behind the times like that.
That is interesting.
So I don't know. Like they actually just finally did their own study on like adding progesterone into a hormone regimen. And like that is old news. That progesterone should be part of a hormone regimen. So it's got its frustrations, it's got its challenges, but at the same time, like I'm safer than I was back home. I have community and I'm figuring it out, you know?
Yeah. So how do politics and policy in the US feel different from where you are now? Does it feel like a past life? Do you keep up with it?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of unavoidable, right? I mean, I live on computer because my job is computer. And, you know, you sort of alluded to my social media presence, which is robust and sort of always on. And like you can't avoid politics in the United States, right? At least not if you're from the US, not if you have connections there. So the thing that I've been telling friends is the days that make me most grateful to be gone are also the days that make me wish I could hug my parents the most. So, you know, there is simultaneously this deep relief, and also this profound sense of loss.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, how has your sense of home and belonging shifted since moving? Probably quite a bit.
Yeah, that's something I'm still actively struggling with. It's been hard. When I visited my parents for the last time, they communicated to me that should the need arise for a funeral, they did not want me attending if it wasn't safe.
Oh my God. That's heavy.
I have a niece who was born over the summer that I've never met. Every now and then, I get to do a little video chat, and it's wonderful. And I cry for at least an hour every time it's over.
Yeah.
Um, we were very fortunate in the sense that we were able to buy a house back home in a rare moment when that was something you could kind of do, and there were loans that would help. And we sold that, losing all the money that we put into the plumbing and the heating and air, right? Because the market has sort of slumped down again, because who has the stability to buy a home right now, right? Mm-hmm. So the bottom fell out of the market right when we needed the money for this move. And between that and between not being able to take everything, we sold the vast majority of our belongings. And I have always, and I know this isn't very Zen of me, but having moved around a great deal, I have always sort of looked to the objects around me to provide continuity. Mm-hmm. I don't think I've ever lived in one place more than 5 years.
Oh, wow.
More often it's been staying in one home, mm-hmm. 3 on average, probably. So having those things around helped me stay rooted. And I still have some of that, but a lot is gone. A lot of things that have kept me, that have provided continuity as I've moved from place to place over the last 39 and a half years are now lost to me. And this is perhaps a lot more Zen, but the thing that also keeps me rooted is my, connections to my people. And I still have those in a way, but they're deeply altered, mm-hmm. Because generally speaking, when my friends are waking up, it's the person who gets up the earliest is a friend of mine who lives on Long Island, and she wakes up at 5 a.m. So I hear from her around lunchtime, and that's really lovely. And but the rest of it, that time difference, it doesn't change everything, but it changes a lot.
It is a big time difference. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause my friends are getting off work. I mean, at midnight for me. Mm-hmm. So the group chats start really popping off around 3 a.m. And, I already kind of had this weird wrecked sort of circadian rhythm where I go to bed at 2 and wake up at 10. And that has actually gotten a little worse now because I don't want to miss anything that my loved ones are saying to me.
You have FOMO.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you love about where you live now?
There is so much to love about where I live. And, I was actually just thinking as you had asked that question that you asked how my sense of home had changed. Mm-hmm. And I got a chance to talk about the loss, but I hadn't quite talked about the things that I do love here. I am going to forget how to drive a car. And I love that for me. There is public transit everywhere. There is walkable infrastructure everywhere. My grocery store is 12 minutes away.
Oh, that must be so nice.
It is incredible. And the weather here is sort of infamously temperamental. More so even than Arkansas. And we're we're level with kind of upper Canada. So it's colder it's rainier, but like, I don't know, you get bundled up and you just go and you like walk along. There's this gorgeous park near where we are, and it's so interesting to me how many of the trees are the same, how many of the plants are the same. And I actually, I love so many of the people. One of my dear friends here, the one who did the opera, she's an expat too. And she and I went over to cat sit for a Dutch friend.
Ooh.
And we went out into this woman's garden, and she had a honeysuckle vine growing up the back of her house. And I started weeping. And it was nice to share that moment with someone who knew why.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But honeysuckle can grow here. Not like, well, it doesn't love it. but it survives.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like I go out into this park and I walk these bridges over the creeks and the canals, and I look out at like the reeds growing along the bank. I look at, the canopies of trees, the willows. They have more waterfowl, different waterfowl, but it feels a little bit like being on the ponds back in Hope,
Yeah.
And so that's nice. But again, too, just they have transit, they have healthcare. There is, generally speaking, a sense of acknowledgement that like societies have to like exist, which like sounds like a really
sounds like common sense, but it's not that common, right?
Yeah. Like it sounds like I'm being sort of like snarky, but like it's not. It's just like on a very basic level, like, oh, people are interdependent,
mm-hmm.
And we have to look out for each other. My wife and I were walking home. It was like 1.5 miles from like a restaurant we love in the center of town. We were going back to our homes, and like we could have taken the train, but like we didn't want to because it was a beautiful night. And we were walking, and there was a sunset over the water, and we passed under this overpass for the train. And my wife pointed out that any other city she'd lived in, there would be an encampment under that overpass.
Mm-hmm.
Because the bank of the water dipped down out of sight of the street. The overpass provided shade and like protection from the elements. Like it was the perfect spot for an encampment, and there wasn't one. And I know that things aren't perfect here. Things aren't perfect anywhere. But there is enough of a commitment to taking care of people
mm-hmm.
that like there's just not as much of that, and not in like a, hey, we're going to go like wreck all these tents and throw people's driver's licenses away so they can't get jobs and then call that cleaning up the city sort of way, right? Like it's like actually addressing these problems in a real way.
What's that like? God.
Right?
We don't have that here in America.
I know. And I don't want to be too flippant because like housing is an issue here right now. It's very expensive. People are kind of like at the mercy of landlords in terms of like, it's a seller's market enough that they can demand whatever extravagances they want and favor people who can provide that. It's not amazing. I have a friend who's been like bouncing around, crashing with like different, friends and acquaintances, trying to just like secure an apartment for maybe half a year. Mm-hmm. So like, I don't want to act like everything is like perfect, but the cracks for people to fall through are much smaller.
Mm. That's a good way to put it.
The baseline amount of human dignity is just so much higher here.
I'm jelly. So, Rachel, what does a safe, affirming world look like to you? Not just legally, but emotionally and socially.
Whew. That's a great question. So it's easy to think about the logistics of it, right? It's easy to think about access to healthcare. It's easy to think about like simply not being excluded
Right.
from so many facets of daily life. I think it would simply be nice not to be a big deal, you know? And that can come from a lot of directions. Like there's the sort of omnipresent threat of violence, right? When you're trans.
Yeah.
But there is also this sort of like less overtly threatening, but just sort of still like draining. Like you go to like a new event somewhere and the facilitator has everyone sit in a circle and they're like, okay, everyone, we're going to go around and we're going to share our names. And then they see you and they're like, and our pronouns. And you're like, well, damn it. You know, like,
Yeah.
Like there are certain kinds of attempts at affirmation that can, if they're not careful, be like a little tokenizing, a little dehumanizing. But I think in a lot of ways, and I don't think I'm alone in saying this. Like, I think the fight or flight has been roaring for so long that it's hard to imagine an ideal because, like, imagining a safe baseline has felt like it's slipping away, you know? Yeah. But I do remember at one point, you know, on Blue Sky, which has a much higher than average percentage of trans users, which is part of why I love it so much. But, you know, in the early days of that website, someone was asking like, okay, if all of the cis people, if all of the people who are not trans were just gone for a day, and it was like only trans people on the earth, what would you do with your day? And the number of people who simply said, go swimming without fear was astronomical. Like it was the most common answer. Like there are so many facets of everyday life where you are constantly on guard. Constantly trying to determine whether someone has just intimated a threat or a misguided attempt at being supportive. And I don't know what it would look like to not have to constantly be walking on that tripwire.
Right.
And bear in mind, when I say that, I mean what I said about curating my friends well. I mean what I said about, you know, feeling like I have strong social circles that allow me to be myself. And I still feel this way, right? I'm one of the lucky ones. I mean, aside from the whole like living in exile thing, right? Like I'm one of the lucky ones. And I'm still so tired. And, you know, and it's unfortunate too that I'm having a hard time imagining like what that ideal world looks like. But what I will say is that it was kind of the same way before I started transition. I expected, I hoped that the misery would go away. I hoped that like the suicidal ideation would stop. I had hoped that like the depression would dissipate and leave me more room to think about other things. And all of that happened. But what I didn't count on was the joy. That surprised me. And, you know, it's people tried to tell me. And they told me that they couldn't tell me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you've only ever seen one side of the coin, it's hard to imagine that what's on the other side is like worth it.
Yeah.
But this was so much more than just like the absence of pain. It is a constant, ever present delight in getting to be alive. Um, and I remember part of the reason I was that nurturer, part of the reason that I was that like mom friend, is that I had always assumed that every single person was as miserable as I was all the time. I just really thought that was the human condition, was
Mm-hmm.
like that level of depression. And I didn't want anyone else to feel that way. And I poured everything I had into making sure that no one else felt that way if I could help it. And now I just get to like wake up every day and be a person. And that it feels, I mean, I can't describe it.
It's indescribable.
I mean, if you were born with your head underwater
Mm-hmm.
and just did your best to breathe it and like didn't know what air was, and then just like one day you got to breathe. I
Life changing.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, which is a different question. I guess I was thinking about
No.
mm,
No, that was beautiful. That was profound. I'm just absorbing all of it.
I mean, I don't know about profound, but what I will say is you get a different perspective on life, and you get a different perspective on what is possible to do with your life. You know, because like when you transition, everything is up for grabs. Not up for grabs, but like up for consideration, up for debate, up for like remolding. I mean, my
Mm-hmm.
body is different. My name is different. So many things about the world that I have built for myself are completely different. And in that process, two things happen. And one of them is you start discovering what it is about yourself that you do like and what it is about yourself that you consider core. And I'm going to be honest, Lise, if I had not known, if I had not gone through that process, I might not have been able to tell you that there was anything about myself that I liked.
Yeah.
But then the other thing that happens is you understand what's possible for a person to do and a person to become. And so like now, when my friends start talking about perimenopause, like, babe, do you know that you don't have to do that? Like, you can just take progesterone and like estrogen and like not have to ever, ever, ever do that if you don't want to. Like, find a doctor who will listen to you and get those prescriptions. Like, that is an option that you have. Someone doesn't like their name, you know, you can just go to a courthouse, get a deed poll, have your friends try on names until you find one that sounds like home and go make it your name. Like, you have so many opportunities to author your own life, and so many people never consider them. I had to consider them
Mm-hmm.
because, like, I was thrown into a position suddenly where nothing that I had taken for granted about my existence was actually concrete. And the secret is, and honestly, I think part of the reason they hate us so damn much is that is just as true for every other person alive if you claim it.
I was just sitting here thinking that. I think a lot of the sickness is that we're just stuck in fight or flight. And I think that, I mean, the world would improve if we were not stuck in fight or flight. And some people don't want the world to improve.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Like that's the wild thing though. Like, it really is that easy. I actually I have a friend who started like doing like baldness treatment, and you know what he told me was, he was like, I always thought it was vain. I always thought it was silly, but like, it makes me a little sad every day. And
mm-hmm.
I saw what you were doing and I thought, well, shoot, maybe I'm worth it.
You're inspiring people. You're still the mom friend.
More than ever, maybe.
Definitely more than ever. Yeah. Okay. So, what do you wish allies understood better about what trans people need right now?
So there are a couple of things. I think the first thing that I would say is a plea for understanding. Understand the emotional reality of what it means to wake up every single day knowing that on a state level or on an executive order or from some other realm, a Supreme Court decision, we are losing our ability to exist bit by bit, but undeniably. And we don't know when the next piece of that is going to come down. And it is soul crushing. Even from this distance, I feel it. And we're traumatized.
Mm-hmm.
And we're traumatized in ways that, like, it can be hard sometimes being in trans spaces because people are so burned out. I don't know anyone in my demographic who doesn't have like a PTSD diagnosis or like textbook signs otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
So I would ask for grace. I would ask for understanding of the material reality of our situation. Um, you know, I would ask for logistical help in, helping people get treatment, helping people stay safe, accompanying people to restrooms, stepping up if someone is about to like start a fight
Mm-hmm.
or otherwise antagonize, like look out for us, check in on us, right? When Charlie Kirk died and everyone immediately started like fabricating reasons that a trans person was somehow responsible.
The
Like,
trans bullets,
yeah, oh my goodness.
which turned out to be untrue.
Yep, whole thing was made up.
Mm-hmm.
Um but like people were gearing up to like declare a holy war on our very existence.
Yep.
I was knocked out of commission at work for a solid week and a half.
Mm.
And every single person that checked in on me was a lifeline. And like, don't be cheesy about it, right? Like you don't have to be like, hey, just wanted to check in on account of, your
Right.
trans and it's just be there. Just be
Yeah.
there. Just like play friggin' a video game or like whatever it is you do with the person that you love that is trans. Like be in their lives. Please. Because we need that right now. We need to feel like we're wanted in society. I have joked about becoming just an absolutely incorrigible flirt, which like I already was one. I am so much worse. But like part of that is that being reminded when like the government and the, like institutions around me are telling me sometimes subtly and sometimes like overt with these words that I am like subhuman, that I am degenerate. I'm like being made to feel desirable, like not only even in a romantic way, but like just desirable to be around. Like there is so much power in that. We
Mm-hmm.
are so alienated right now. um and I guess the other piece of that is like being willing to draw lines in the sand that support us, being willing to stand with us. Right now, um you know J.K. Rowling dedicated her entire fortune to a legal fund whose sole purpose is to try to roll back trans rights across the United Kingdom and even in nearby countries that aren't in the United Kingdom. And she almost single-handedly paid for a Supreme Court case that has had even more disastrous effects in the UK than the Trump administration has had in the US. And she gloated about it on Twitter when it was done. And she has led hate mobs against athletes who weren't even trans because they looked masculine to her. All of those athletes were black, by the way. There's a lot to be said about how, policing femininity from a trans lens also winds up incorporating like these like white standards of beauty and femininity, and how that affects like every other kind of woman that exists. Um,
Absolutely.
you
J.K.
know,
Rowling is trash.
well, yeah, she is. So like the thing about that to understand, like they're making this big push right now, right? This big Harry Potter push. There's like an audiobook series with a bunch of actors that I used to love and now can't stand to look at anymore. There's like this mini series again with like I basically had to like throw out every British movie because like I can't look at any of these faces anymore, right? So like, and I have people who used to be friends who are very excited for these things, and now I know that I can't trust them because they are willing, like, and you can talk about like separate the art from the artist, you can say that, but like financially you are contributing to the erosion of my ability to live, right?
Yep. Other than our vote, where we put our money is the most power that we have. So,
Yeah, and I say my ability to live, I don't mean just like to exist in public. I mean like period. Like my brain does not run on the juice that my body makes. I tried it for 37 years and I wound up standing on an overpass thinking, I mean, I could do it, but what if the last thing I see is a Tesla? And I called a doctor and I got a hormone appointment. Because I knew I didn't have enough. I did not have 37 more years left in me.
right.
And now that I know what it feels like to just be a person, I can't go back. If they take away that health care, people are going to die. I mean, people have already died as a result of this administration's actions, both due to hate crimes and due to suicides. And Rowling's money and her rhetoric have been a giant driver for that. So, like, if you say that you stand with us, you have to actually do it. You have to actually do it. Like, you cannot fund my oppression and then turn around and call me your friend.
Smile in your face. Yep.
And the other piece of that, like, again, going back to the whole thing about like moving right doesn't actually win elections. We know that. We know it's a losing strategy. Now that you know it's a losing strategy, I need you to like overtly give a damn about us. Like when someone like Gavin Newsom comes on and starts repeating like right-wing talking points about trans people, like you need to make it clear that that's not acceptable, right? Like we are years out from even like having a primary. This man has to be like anathema, right? Like he's saying all the same stuff. He's saying all the same stuff. And we know that that loses votes, but also like when you stand up for someone like that, we see you. We see you going to the mat for someone who is spewing the same dehumanizing, like Nazi rhetoric about us, about how we're subhuman, about how we should be excluded from all these spaces. So like, don't. I guess is what I would ask. Like, it's so easy. It's so easy not to cape for these people.
Right.
When you could just simply just be normal. Just be normal about us. Please.
Just be cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
What message would you share with trans folks who might feel afraid right now?
The first one is that it's still worth it. I have 3 different people in my DMs right now who have started hormones in the last month, even in the face of this. And all of them are describing the same joy that I have felt. Okay? You are more than what they say you are. And you know it. You know it. And if you let yourself be that thing that you know that you are, you're unstoppable. Like, and like find community, okay? Like find actual community. Get outside, touch grass, find other people. Actually, I saw someone else on Blue Sky. This was not me, but someone else was like, if you are a slur, it is very important for you to leave your house and meet other slurs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like even people who have a different slur than the one that you have, right? Like you need to go like meet other people who are also on the margins of society, because there is strength there and there is community there. Get engaged, right? Like join organizations locally that are helping. Do something. You will feel better. It is so much better than looking at your phone and being sad all the time. And you will meet people, and those people will help you when you've got your back against the wall. If you need an exit, there are resources. There are like whole wikis out there, like written by trans people about where's safe to go and like the mechanics of getting there. Elise can put you in touch with me. I will help you get to Europe if I can, if you need that. Like you have options.
Absolutely.
And like you can remove yourself from the situation. You can stay and fight, but like you got to do one of them. And if you remove yourself from the situation like I do, then the work becomes getting other people out. Like we are all in this, and like heaven help us, because some of us are messes. I know I am, but we are in this together. And that's the only way we're going to get through it.
Mm-hmm. There's strength in numbers. What gives you hope right now, even in difficult times? The bleakest of times.
People. It's always people. You know, I have so many places where I have found community. And I know not everyone is like as extroverted as me, but I promise you, like one of my communities is like a group of people who arrange and record cover versions of video game music. And if you want to talk about like a deeply queer, deeply neurodivergent, deeply niche scene, like that is about as many different ways to tick those boxes as you can imagine. And when I said, like, I know 3 people that have started hormones in the last month, 2 of them were from there. And turns out, you know, something about staying inside and playing video games all day and then getting obsessed with the music you're hearing and then staying aside and like writing it out and playing it, like that has a lot of overlap with people who think too much about the world around them and about their gender and about, you know, go figure. I say think too much. No, that's not it, you know, but people who think deeply. I do have the trans community. I have, you know, family, and some of that family is, you know, kin, and some of that family is found. But like, it's always people. People are what gives me hope. And seeing people stand together, seeing people stand up, seeing people comfort each other. Like I said, I mean, we've got us. Mm-hmm. And the good news is that us is enough.
Mm. I have one more question, because that was all the questions, but I'm sitting here thinking I could interview you a whole podcast about like how to build community. But what are some tips you have for building community?
That's okay. So that's a good question. Like, are you thinking about like in an existing space, or are you talking about like finding one?
finding one, yeah, in a new space.
So part of it has to do with loving yourself enough and like being brave enough to like take the steps to look for places that you might want to be and then putting yourself in them, right? So like the video game music stuff online, I stumbled into that. There are websites for it. I met a person in my real life, in like actual physical world, who played in a band, and like I pursued that all the way to the end of the rainbow, and like now I am surrounded by people. But you know, I think if I hadn't known Lauren, I hope I still would have found, you know, through like websites, through Facebook groups, through like all of these things, you know, at the time Facebook groups, you know, Facebook is, you know what I mean. But then like also like the local like trans meetup that I went to, and like I didn't know what to expect. I kind of wasn't expecting anything, and then what I found was like ages 20 to 65, like all possible like gender expressions, and it was just like a dozen people, right? But I'm already like planning to like go have coffee and walk around a park with one of those people tomorrow, you know.
So just putting yourself out there.
Just putting yourself out there. And like I know like that sounds like a cliche. And I guess the thing that I would say is like in these spaces, especially like when you dig down into like niche spaces and queer spaces and people who are used to being as kicked around as we are, you have got to trust that all of those people are as scared, all of those people are as traumatized, all of those people have faced as much rejection as you have, and they're choosing to be there anyway. And like you cannot get into your own head about how you're being perceived. Like I know that is like the default mode of like almost everyone, but especially people who have been through like what we've been through. But you gotta take the risk. You've got to take the risk. You've got to find a place that fits. And if a place doesn't fit, then you can find another place, but you gotta find it. Mm-hmm. You gotta find it.
And you gotta find your people.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Rachel. Was there anything else that I missed that you want to talk about?
If there was, then I have also forgotten it. I apologize.
No, you're fine. Where can everyone find you on social media?
So, okay, at social media, I am on Blue Sky.
If you have a website, anything.
Yeah, I'm on Blue Sky as MomFriend64. I think I'm actually like I'm migrating to a different like server, but that will still be my name. And I finally, since we talked last, I'm pointing at you like my camera is on, and it's not. Since we talked last, I did like go ahead and buy RachelGarrettSteele.com, and like it's a train wreck of like a half-baked non-portfolio of just like jumbled, you know, nonsense. But I will clean house and I will get it going, and that'll be golden, and everyone will love it.
Beautiful. Thanks for listening to For Love and Justice. If this episode helped you make sense of the chaos, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who'd also vibe with it. It takes 2 seconds, and it really helps the pod show up in the algorithm so more people can find it. And let me know what I should cover or who I should interview next.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you.